Good morning, everybody. We had some technology hitches this morning, just to start the new year off right. And I had, well, my name is Joanne Butcher, if you haven't met me before. And I wanted to have a class, and we couldn't figure it out, but I have 3 clients who are all working in animation. And we'll get that together. We're going to get it together to actually have them teach a class about animation. But for now, I figured we'll just do an interview with 2. Kafi Kareem, who is in Trinidad and Tobago, and Keika Lee, who is in the Bay Area. And I'm going to do my normal filmmaker's life and talk to you about your careers and how you got started and all of that. But one of the things that I have, I certainly don't know anything about animation, but so one of the things that I've learned from watching you all work is that there's been a transformation and a way that people who are working in animation can work internationally, as Keika found, to save a whole lot of money. And Kafi was doing that just because she was doing that. But so, all right. So let's just start with the question that I always like to start with, which is, when did you first know that you were a filmmaker? Kafi, why don't you go first? When did you first know that you were?
So I think that's an interesting question. And for me, one of the moments that stands out is when I was in my final year of undergrad, which would have been around 2006. And I had done this degree program that was like cultural analysis. And so I had been looking at film texts and all sort of media texts, literary texts, and analyzing them from like a cultural perspective and learning about all of these communication theories and stuff, which was super interesting. But by that time, I knew, I was like, I don't want to just study this stuff and be able to talk about it. I want to make it. And so there was like a real sort of, confirming around that time that, so that's when I started to volunteer for sets. And I tried to get into productions that students were doing who were actually in the School of Film and Television on my campus, and didn't choose a boring theoretical degree like I did. So around that time,
school. Where did you go?
Ithaca College, upstate New York.
Upstate New York, right?
Yes.
Right.
So yeah, that's around the time that I knew, I was like, I want to make the stuff. I don't want to just, study it.
Lovely. And what about you, Keika? When did you realize you were a filmmaker?
Wow, being a filmmaker. Well, okay, so that's an interesting question, because I always knew I wanted to be an animator ever since I was 7, and I saw my first film, which was Cinderella, with Disney's Cinderella. But filmmaker, making my own films, I knew I wanted to make my own films when I did my first internship at Kyoto Animation in college. I went to Japan, and when I studied there, in college, they said to me, okay, for this internship, you're going to make your own short film. And I was like, okay. And they're like, here, you can use all our software, and you can use all our tools, and you can ask our directors and lead animators any questions you want, go. And I was like, all right. And so I went through the whole process, and I just fell in love with it. And from that point on, I was like, this is it for me. I love animation, but I want to make my own films from this point on.
And what was the name of the company that you said you were interning with?
Kyoto Animation.
Can you spell it? I can't hear.
Oh, Kyoto Animation, Kyoto. Yeah, Kyoto Animation.
Animation. Okay, lovely. And how exciting to go to intern in Japan. Wonderful. So Kafi, now, so by this time you decided you wanted to be a filmmaker. When did you decide to be an animator? And just so you know, this is how I feel. Filmmakers are my heroes, but animators, I'm just like, Oh my God. Filmmaking is really hard, but animation is just beyond. So what then took you towards animation?
Yeah. So I've been thinking about that a lot these days. And I think when I look back at my sort of history in the arts and media, there was definitely an unconscious draw that I was not aware, like consciously aware of, and that anytime I had downtime and I wanted to watch something on TV, my choice was either adult animation or kid animation that I was too old for, right? But I was still watching it because it was really fun to me. And you know, I love to see the colors and the way that the art and the sound comes together. And so that was one of the, like, you know, telling things for me. I was like, there's a pull here. And I was also really just fascinated by digital design. And none of that translated into actually producing animation until I in 2015 decided that I wanted to start doing some original content, and I wanted to do some original scripted content. And I came up with an idea that I thought would be a real good fit for animation, because of the story, but also because of the skill set around me and the people that I was collaborating with. I was collaborating with people who were artists and animators. And so I was like, you know, using the resources that are available to me, this is a really good fit. Let's just go into that. So it wasn't a deliberate decision. And then 4 years later, I found myself having done 6 animated shorts. And then COVID hit, and the live action feature that I was working on became an animated project, because that just made sense in COVID conditions to continue. And, you know, I had built up all this experience in animation from the shorts. It just made sense to continue on that path. And so it definitely wasn't a deliberate decision, but it felt like a duh moment. Like, what? Like, how was I not in this earlier? Because I love it. I'm always watching animation. I love art. I love seeing everything come together in terms of the drawings and how we can get performance out of art, and how we can communicate through the, you know, the visuals that are created. And I love everything about it. So it was kind of crazy that I didn't get to it earlier, but I'm glad that I did.
And I also want to go back for both of you. You both have had quite some experience in the corporate world. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and where how that fits in, I guess, to the whole picture. Kafi, you go first.
Sure.
After college, what did you?
Yeah. So after college, I actually worked for a nonprofit for about a year, and I was doing like documentary productions for an organization that lobbied on Capitol Hill. Again, one super interesting, but I knew that was where I wanted to fit. I knew that scripted content was where I wanted to be. So one of my first corporate gigs in the scripted world, close to the scripted world, it wasn't in a studio, but it was in just PBS Interactive. It was my first internship. So PBS Interactive was launching a new video portal, and they wanted interns to help with, you know, building out the library. And so I was able to go in to one of my favorite brands, because again, I was a big kids content fan, and they have a lot of animation that I was a fan of. I'm also a big Sesame Street fan, so it was a super like nostalgic, you know, experience for me to go and work with PBS. And so I was able to like look at their archive library with Julia Child. I was able to see like their adults content as well as some of their kids content, and see the differences in how they were building out the portals, learn about UI and UX and how that came into play when, you know, the kids spaces, the kids digital spaces were you know, built really visually, as opposed to the adult spaces that were built more in terms of literary like text and reading, you know, reading words. And then the kids spaces were built on images, like that kind of stuff. I was able to get an introduction into like, how do you build digital spaces for different audiences in terms of age group and different types of content, whether it's live action or animated. So that was one of my first corporate experiences. And that segued into another interactive opportunity at Disney Interactive, where I was able to, again, work in non-traditional platforms. So the website, their OTT apps, their web, again, they were launching a new web portal. It was really fortuitous. So I was able to see, you know, the building process of them getting that portal up, and how does the content inform the technology, and how does the audience inform both the technology experience and the content. And, you know, I was able to get a little bit of experience with looking at data of how parents watch with kids, like, you know, looking at who's watching the Roku apps and seeing interesting statistics pop up, like it's a bunch of 35-year-old men that are watching Doc McStuffin. Something's up here. We get it. It's men who are registering for the Roku and who are co-watching with kids. Or,
I admit it, I watch it on my own, sorry.
Right?
You know.
What's going on here? So yeah, so it's like men who are registering for their households OTT apps, and sometimes co-watching, you know. So then it opened me up to the fact that kids content isn't only for kids, and that's why we always, you know, see these, like we see good content written on a number of levels, so that there's something for everybody in the room, and the parents can snicker at something that the kids mightn't quite get, but it's still in there. And so those experiences were really informative to me. Because everything that I learned helped me understand and think about audience in a slightly different way when I started making my own content. And to think about the fact that audience isn't as simple as the target demographic. And yeah, so.
Very interesting. And when you and I first met, we bonded over spreadsheets. Like,
yes.
Because you know, I think that artists, the last thing that they're thinking about usually is spreadsheets, you know. But I had worked for YouTube, and I would work with this team in the UK, and we had like you know, 175 pages on a spreadsheet, and you know, all this information, all these films, and
all that metadata.
all that, and so it has you think a bit differently about audience, and those sound like some great experiences. And what about you, Keika? You have had some heavy duty corporate background as well.
Yeah, I worked, so right out of college, I worked for Electronic Arts. I worked on their Lord of the Rings franchise, and that's where I got my first production experience, working on production games, and I just fell in love with it. As an artist, loving spreadsheets, that's where I got my first love of spreadsheets as well. And which a lot of my artist colleagues were like, what? But to me, spreadsheets are like a form of artwork to me. But I did want to say that the experience I got from working at like Electronic Arts, DreamWorks, and companies like Zynga, it taught me a lot of things. Like, I would assume it taught Kafi a lot of things, like things that experience can teach you that no going to school can teach you about. And a mentor of mine early on in my career told me that. Like, I thought about going to business school for film, and she told said, Keika, don't even think about business school. Experience is the best school of life that can teach you about film. And I was like, really? So I was going, and so I worked at I kept working at Electronic Arts, learning the trade of production, and then learning with the artists and art directors. I learned about their leadership skills, and then DreamWorks, I worked on Shrek and Madagascar, and I worked with some pretty like awesome leaders there, and learned about the way they led their artists. And it's things that they just can't teach you, you know, at a school. Like you have to learn by being there and working with these people and building relationships. And I think it's just so valuable. And so what I took from that is I apply that to my filmmaking today. So like if I learned about how an art director would lead their artist into directing them in a way that they want to create their vision with empathy, or with a certain way of, you know, just speaking to them, you know, it carried on from there, from learning from that experience. And so I just wanted to say that, you know, that's what I learned from my corporate experience.
Lovely, lovely. But for some reason, both of you chose to not stay in the corporate experience. Keika, you did, I don't know, 20, 30 years, right?
20 years.
20 years, yeah. But eventually, what was the decision for you, you think, that had you leave that world and go on your own?
I had that bug inside me that was like, you need to make your own films. You need to make your own films. Like, you're making other people's films, and for some reason that's just not fully satisfying your life, your dreams. That my whole life was about creating films and animations and characters to share with the world, and to create magic for children, just like Disney had created magic for me when I was little. And so I just had to fulfill that dream, you know. And I thought about it, and it went as far as thinking, like, what is something that I would regret on my deathbed? And that is something I would totally regret.
Beautiful. And then what about you, Kafi? What made you decide to leave that world?
So for me,
it was spreadsheets.
For me, it was that my visa status meant that I couldn't renew my my employment at Disney, right? So it was a sort of hiccup with HR, and that I had just gotten this new promotion, and it was a super, you know, awesome highlight of my career. But then HR realized that, your visa type, we can't hire you. And so that actually led me to start an LLC, where I was using all of the digital content and online video expertise in particular, that I had gotten online video expertise, to work with startups. So I started working with a couple startups who were interested in online video and who were doing some very cool things. One was Pluto TV, and they recently got acquired by Viacom. And so I was able to be with them from the start, and kind of see how they were building out. And I was able to take you know, the helm of their kids content channels in terms of the editorial, and like kind of deciding the foundation and direction of how we might build out some of these kid spaces. I was also able to do some music channels with them. And so that was still sort of corporate, but it was independent corporate. And so, as in I was a contractor. So I had a little bit more freedom. And around the time that my contract with Pluto ended, I started really like like Keika said, thinking about why did you get into this whole thing in the first place? Why did you go like, why did you want to volunteer when you were, you know, in undergrad for people's productions? Why did you move to LA? Because I was in LA at the time, right? Why? What's the why? And the why was not necessarily, not at all, to work in the technology side of things. I wanted to be a creator. And so I saw an opportunity now. I was like, so what's stopping you now? You have time, right? Your contract is ended. You definitely have time. You have a circle of talented people around you who are interested in film and media. And you can do this. So let's start. And that's why I started and I was like, you know, you really want to make things. And I looked back at my diaries and I looked at like the notes that I made and stuff, and production company was in there, like in my scribbles, because I scribble all over my diary, right? So I definitely had goals of being a creator of content and being in control, or being able to direct the storytelling. You know what I mean? As in the direction of it, not literally directing as in the technical direction, but I mean like being able to control the narrative and being able to put a perspective out there that I felt like I didn't often see, which was the perspective of a Black Caribbean woman.
Mm.
And so that's why I got started. Yeah.
Beautiful. And you know, I often
Caught Keika's bug.
pardon? You got
I caught Keika's bug.
People often ask me, you know, well, what is a producer? You know, I'll be talking to a filmmaker and I'll be like, I think you might be a producer. And they're like, well, what is a producer? And I have various definitions. And one of them is the producer is the one who has the vision and swallows the bitter truth that they have to raise the money to have the vision come into effect. Another one is a real producer is a control freak. And they just want to be in control of everything. So I think that's what I understand you mean by directing the vision. It's like, I see this, and whether I am the one who draws or not, that's the producer. That's the one who, I see this and then I'm going to make it happen. I think that's the decision you made. So you said you were surrounded by all these creative people. Was that in LA, or was that when you returned to Trinidad, or how did you find this community of artists?
So it was, I made the decision when I was back in Trinidad, and a lot of my family members are in film and media. So I have a cousin who's a film editor. She's a film editor who actually, one of her short films was in the short film corner at Cannes. And she was on the diversity committee at Cannes for quite a while. So she's a very dedicated editor, video editor, film editor, and she's interested in narrative films. I had another cousin who, at the time, he was just starting his undergrad journey, and he was very much interested in animation. And he draws. He's a really good artist, and he also tells stories. My sister, she works in advertising. She's actually directing up the not digital content. She's directing the content division of Lonsdale, Saatchi and Saatchi in Trinidad. And so she's in the advertising world. She'd been writing copy for quite a long time. She was a senior copywriter for a long time, and she's a writer, and she's in that world of media, even if she isn't on the narrative side. And then I mean, Trinidad is just such a, overabundance of creative talent, right? So outside of my family, there's just all like a whole island, right, of people with a really pronounced skill sets in the visual arts, and some of them choose to express that through film and media, right? So I was literally like in a pool of talent, like swimming in it, and I was like, we can do something here. I can do something.
You remember that time I was in Trinidad one time, and I was at Starbucks in Port of Spain, and I told you this story. And I think I was just there to do some work or something, and I'm working away, and I see these two guys next to me, and they're showing something to clearly a client on a computer, and it turned out they were animators. And I go, when they left, I go, hey. But it does feel, I mean, Trinidad is a place where art is so valued, I think, all kinds of arts, and I often tell people that I find this is interesting, that there are all these like competitions. Does Best Village still happen?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you just tell everybody what Best Village is? Because I think it's just amazing.
So Best Village brings together like it's very dance based and drumming based, but it brings together a lot of like African retention folk arts, and like limbo, ballet, like ballet dancing is a type of folk dancing, stick fighting, a lot of like African legacy performing arts, and also traditions that are like, that you can see performed, traditions that you can see performed. It brings them together to showcase and compete. So like it's called Best Village because it's like, I guess the legacy is that whoever's village comes forward with the best group is who's gonna win, right? So your village, you're repping for your village, in other words, right? You come forward, and who has the best dancers, who has the best stick fighters, who has the best limbo people, and you come forward and you compete. Yeah. And drumming is a big part of it too, for the dancing and stuff.
The thing I love, and to me, Best Village sort of sums up a certain concept, which is that no matter how far away you are from any kind of center, that you are a competitor in a show that is televised, that you eventually compete to, up into a national level. And I think this is a model in Trinidad for the arts that you just see across the board, whether it's Steelman, whether it's whatever it is. There's always a competition, and there's always somebody competing for something.
And an opportunity for the grassroots to become mainstream.
Yes, and then the corporate sponsorship is always there, and it's just very, 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 very interesting. How that is.
You're very right.
Yeah, and then when say living in the Bay Area, I would always have to say, to my Trinidadian clients, you have to understand, you have all these advantages that my Bay Area clients do not have. We don't have that kind of community, that's kind of baked into the land, Yeah. So Keika, what about you? How did you build your team?
Oh, a lot of my team came from contacts, because I had been working in the industry for almost 20 years. I had, I've known a lot of artists along the way. And so I had reached out to all my colleagues from my past jobs and would be like, hey, I'm working on a new film. You want to help me? And a lot of times they would be like, oh, I'd be happy to help, but I don't have time, but I know somebody. And so it was very helpful that way. And also I would be able to find really talented new talent from my college or local colleges like San Jose State. It was really helpful to get students who are really enthusiastic about helping on a short film. Animated films were really like popular for them.
What adjustments did you have to make going from the corporate world to, say, working with students? What was that like?
It actually, I would say, it was like working with people, people right out of college, they're just more enthusiastic. That's I mean, they're more enthusiastic. They really want to either, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't know how to answer that question.
no, but I think that's incredibly important, because when you're in the position of being the one who has to find the money to pay people, you know, I'm always talking about how it can't be about the money. It has to be about the enthusiasm, the talent and the enthusiasm, not, you know, and so I'm always finding my clients are trying to get more money so they can hire better people, instead of, no, we've got to hire better people and we'll figure out the money part, you know.
Yeah.
But the most enthusiastic person is the one that you want on your team, you know, and that's never going to be about necessarily a conversation about the money. And Kafi, what about you? What was there a big shift in between working with your team in the corporate world and working with your team that you were bringing together?
Was there a big shift? There was definitely, I think, an opportunity for me to do something that Keika spoke about, which was to utilize what I had experienced as being part of a team in the corporate world and being led by people who had a working style that influenced me. I was able to take what I saw in terms of the leaders and the team members who I worked with and implement that into working with my team. So skills like leading with empathy, like Keika spoke about. Like I had a manager who taught me a lot about that, because when I was at Disney, I made a big, huge mistake around Super Bowl that could have cost the company millions and millions of dollars. And the way that my manager handled it taught me so much about leadership. And so those kinds of lessons, again, you have to experience them, right? And so once what was that?
How did he handle it?
Okay, so let me give you this story. Let me give you guys a scoop, the whole story. So what happened was there was this big new Marvel ad for the new Marvel movie, and it was supposed to go out at a certain time. And we had developed this new video portal, and so part of my job was to schedule everything and to make sure everything goes out the way that it's supposed to. And something went wrong, and the ad went out early before the Super Bowl. And we know that Super Bowl is like millions and millions of ad dollars, right? So of course we pull it down. And so I'm out to lunch when all these fires are happening, and I come back, and the way that my manager handled it was to analyze the process that we were using to get the videos published, find the faults in the process that allowed the mistake to happen, and then correct the process and find all of the weaknesses in the process, including in the technology and in the human side of it, so that that couldn't happen again. As opposed to being like, you idiot, right? He could have easily thrown me under the bus.
Yes.
Right? That was not the way that he decided to handle it. And it taught me so much, because there were weaknesses in the system. I was definitely responsible for making a mistake, but what went wrong was not only a human error, and that it helped me as well be okay with the mistake that I made. But it also taught me about leadership and about building things, because, you know, you have to have an eagle eye. You have to have an eagle eye. And when you're in the forest, you get lost in the leaves and the brushes, and you need to have that eagle eye of, okay, let me survey the entire thing and see what's going on. And so being able to have that micro and macro view of things, the macro view vicariously through my manager, who, you know, took that eagle eye view, and then having the micro view from me as somebody who was a cog in the wheel, that taught me a lot. And so once I was able to start building my own teams, things like problem solving, and again, relating to people in a way that was more empathetic, were things that I definitely carried with me, and I think it made the team stronger for sure. Because there were some young people working with me who had come from different corporate experiences in and out, well, mostly outside of media and arts. But I remember, you know, they shared with me stories of leadership and how their leaders made them feel and how difficult it was to show up to work every day because they were like, okay, here I go again. She's gonna just make me feel like crap, right? And so they shared with me stories of like how the managers that they worked with made them feel. And so I know that it helped make our team stronger and better. And it helped us do something with very little resources that many people thought couldn't be done because of the shortage of financial resources and maybe technological resources that we had, right? So we may have been short on money and short on fancy technology, but we had a team that was cohesive, that respected each other, had a lot of talent, spoke to each other. I also was able to bring in like more tangible and hard, I guess you call them hard skills, because the soft skills are empathy, right? So hard skills like project management, right? Because I was able to see how the team that was building the video portal at Disney did like stand-up meetings and used the stand-ups as information gathering opportunities so that you can know what everybody's working on. If you're working on a agile project where people are, grabbing different tickets, and you want to be able to keep abreast of what fires need to be outed and how you keep those meetings short and what you share in those meetings. You just share what you're working on. If there are any problems, move on to the next person, right? Things like that. I was able to take all of that into the experience. So that was your question, right? Like how was the transition from corporate to team? Yeah. So I think it was a really good transition because I learned so much.
Bringing all that experience. So how did you end up getting involved? I just put the link in the chat with Big Man Dan. How did that project come about?
So as I mentioned, I was like, okay, you want to be creating this stuff, let's start creating. So I started writing these scripts, and I came up with a series that was at the time called Cockroach Chronicles, because if you've ever been to Trinidad and spent like a long time here, there are these flying cockroaches that terrorize us. And, you have these open spaces, because you want to enjoy the tropical weather. But one of the side effects is that the cockroaches can get into these open spaces. And so I was like, okay, we're going to write about these cockroaches and make a really funny, low budget animation web series about these cockroaches. One of the people on my team, as I mentioned, was my sister, who is who's a copywriter at Lonsdale. And so she gave me the feedback that she felt like the Cockroach Chronicle things, it could get redundant. Like if every episode were just like cockroaches. So in one of the episodes that I had written for Cockroach Chronicles, there was this character called Dan. And Dan was a really big guy. And here was this little cockroach who made Dan feel like small, right? Because there was a commentary on the fact that, there's no such thing as like big and macho when you're dealing with the flying cockroach. And anybody who has experienced one knows that that's the truth. And so I started looking at that character, Dan, and I took the feedback that I got, and I was like, okay, so maybe there's something here with Dan. And so I started looking at Dan, and I was like, I could do something around him. And that's how Big Man Dan got started, right? I was like, there's something to be explored here in terms of who is this macho guy, and what kind of conflicts does he have to deal with in his life, right? And so it started off as this big vision for a series, and it eventually just ended up being the one short. But the vision started from me finding something in Dan and then pitching that to everybody who I was working with at the time, which was family. and being like, okay, so what do you think about this? Here's this idea. We'll call it Big Man Dan. It's about this guy. He's super macho and he has to navigate all these scenarios based on what his idea of manliness is. And they're like, yeah, that could work better. And so then I took that pitch to the Caribbean Tales Incubator, which is a Toronto-based incubation program for film producers. And so there I was able to further develop the idea. And I got really good advice there about like how to, visually represent the themes that I was exploring, and, that kind of stuff came out from that experience. And and so then after the Caribbean Tales Incubator, I went ahead and made the short.
Beautiful. And and I was just going to also put Keika's film in here, and then I just lost it. I'll find it again. So Keika, how did you end up working on Odd Dog?
So Odd Dog was my first short that I created. Started 4 years ago. It was my first short that I created with my animation studio that I started 4 years ago as well, Grayscale Animation. It's about a cat who thinks that he's a dog, and a boy who wants a dog but is only allowed to have a cat. So they make the perfect match. So it's based on my son and his cat, and our cat acts like a dog as well. So it's a very personal story. The short was completed in 2019, and it was screened at film festivals all around the world, and was recently released on YouTube about a month ago. And it's been received pretty well. I'm actually working on a second short, planning on making it into a series, and pitching it to networks right now, actually, which is going pretty okay. The pitching process is pretty fun. And meeting cool people in cool networks is also really fun. I'm also working on my next short, Orange Way, which I think Joanne put a link to in the chat, which is also going really well.
So tell us a little bit about the pitching, if you're willing to say where you've been pitching, or how has that experience been? It's
eye-opening. So a year ago, I had absolutely no idea how to pitch. No idea. I was new to the whole scene. And thanks to Joanne, I was able to put together a pitch deck and be able to build some confidence and present. I am a total introvert. I don't like presenting. I am one of those people who throw up right before I present. So it's a whole new experience for me. One of the first people I presented to was Amazon Kids. They were very interested in seeing the series. They said no for now, but the experience was absolutely incredible. It's just amazing to put together the deck and be able to pitch it to friends and family and have them give me feedback and tell me, like, be more enthusiastic, or tell me, like, you don't need this slide, or or oh, this slide's really cool, keep that. And having Joanne tell me to, like, stand in an X pose and, like, shout out my pitch, it's awesome. But yeah, it's been an incredible experience. And I have another pitch meeting coming up, which I can't talk about, but I'm excited about that.
Fantastic. Yes. And, it's really amazing to see how you have developed with all of that, because there's always, there's the work, you do beautiful work. And then there's the communicating with, you're sort of back in the corporate world, communicating with those people you used to work with, but now you're on the other side of the table, right?
Yeah, it's really weird.
but yeah, you know, it's just been great to watch you. I mean, I always say, you know, some of the confidence has to be performance. It's not necessarily that it's there. You just have to perform it, you know. And it's great that you're building all these relationships because it's going to work. Kafi, what about you? What are you? What's your latest and greatest? What are you up to?
So I recently, based on feedback from everyone who was helping me develop this new feature that I'm working on. Oh, I'm working on a feature, right? I mentioned that, right? So
What's the last one, Kafi?
So it's about these 5 kids who get in trouble with the law. And instead of being sent to like a strict and rigid detention center, the police officer who finds them sends them to this experimental community service golf program. So they go to learn how to play golf and to caddy. And while they're there on the golf course, they discover a magical portal and they get crime fighting superpowers. And so they come back into the real world from this magical portal armed with powers to fight crime and to fight the bad guys who got them in trouble with the police officer in the first place. And so I'm working on that. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I was getting as I was developing the pitch deck was about the look and feel of the poster art and how important that is to start to communicate what this story is. And so I wanted to be able to solve that problem. And the way I did it was to have a character design competition where I invited people to submit designs. I put together this sort of director's package where I had done research about how I want the kids to look based on the cast, and also how I wanted their superpowers to be visually communicated, because they get tokens that hold their powers, right? So I researched like the tokens and what I wanted them to look like based on some of the themes that I really want to get across in the movie. And I put together this package that designers who signed up downloaded. And we got some really good designs. I was excited. We got some interest from a lot of different countries. And the winner was a character designer from Jamaica. And so I used his art to redo the pitch deck. And that has been, that sort of closed off 2020. And so now in 2021, I have this new pitch deck, this new look that I'm using to get the feature idea out there.
Fabulous, fabulous. So in our last 10 minutes, I always like to open it up to questions, and ideally raise your hand so that I can see you, or raise your hand digitally. Diane has a question.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kafi and Keika. I followed your work a bit. I love this story, and I'm right now working with a lot of students, and for me, it's like, and I also have been very immersed in academia, and one of the things that I love about working with students is the enthusiasm, though it is challenging making that shift. And then the other thing, this is more what I would have a question about. Is that what I find interesting, though, is like kind of is what you were talking about, Joanne, or what you guys are all talking about, is that the difference between living in a country that's not based on that best village concept. We don't necessarily come from that idea that, that we should be drawing from everywhere. But I feel like right now that we're in a time where potentially that's happening because of the equalization of COVID and the fact that many of us are connecting virtually. Like, I mean, I would not be sitting on this call in all likelihood had Joanne not come up with this. And so 2 things, I would just love to hear how you, either Kafi, I was addressing this primarily to, like how you feel that we can take advantage of that particular thing that's happening culturally right now in this country. And then also, I just want to put out there, I've just launched my crowdfunding campaign. I'm making my first documentary feature. It's a story about 6 to 7 women who have experienced sexual or physical trauma. and we're exploring how we empower ourselves and our communities with our art. It's anchored on my own story of surviving and beating a rape in 2010, and very importantly, how we all are taking back our lives. So I am putting all that information in the chat. So I just wanted to get that in there. And then Kafi and I'd love to see how Keika, because I love the idea of developing communities in alternative ways. And then how can we take advantage of that?
Congratulations on the film that you're working on. It sounds really exciting. I love anything that shows women taking their power back. I'm like, yes, because Big Man Dance started off as a film about machismo, but I really ended up making a film about a woman who was navigating machismo. So it really was the woman's story. And I love that you're doing that. So about like building community, the thing that I've learned about grassroots projects, right, is that there's always people who really care about things, right? Really care about issues, even if they don't know how to voice it.
Okay.
And so once you find other people who care about what you care about, and then you just make a commitment to getting together on a regular schedule, whether that's once a month or bi-weekly or whatever, I think organically solutions tend to, I could be wrong, but there was this cool project that I looked at when I was in grad school that was called Made in LA. And it was a project that was highlighting the terrible treatment that women who worked in sweatshops experience. Mm-hmm. And what they did is they built an entire campaign that was around documenting the protests that were happening and using the films that they were making to add momentum to the protests and to make change, right? Mm-hmm. And the way that they did it was to stay regular, to keep communicating with the people who cared about the issues, and also to from the filmmakers' perspective, to learn as much as they could once they got into the communities that were already active. And so I think it sounds like I agree with you that it's a democratizing force, that we are all able to now sort of have an even playing field. Mm-hmm. Right? Because some of the barriers that may have prevented us from getting into rooms before, now it's like we don't have to worry about getting into the room. We can just hop online.
Right, exactly.
Right? And so use the online spaces and see who shows up. Sometimes people that you may not even, just put it out there, start with a goal, get everybody together that cares about the same thing. And you can go in with a clear mission, or you can go in and see what the mission becomes. Right. I don't know that there's a right or wrong way. And I don't know that I'm qualified at all to give you advice on this, but that's what I would do.
All right. Well, thank you. And I also love both of your experiences around the pitching, because Joanne and I've been going back and forth about that. And it is fun. And I do love working with Joanne, because when I step into other spaces and see how other professionals handle teaching pitching, it just doesn't happen. And I love the fact that it feels the way you're talking about it. It's like, okay, I'm going to get this in under 30 seconds. So thank you both, and I appreciate you all taking the time.
Mark, then Joe.
It's been just delightful hearing both of your stories and seeing your excitement and enthusiasm and your independence in what you're doing. So congratulations, both of you, on what you're doing. I'm working on my second feature documentary about a Native American artist and his wife, who's also an artist. And we've had conversations about animating some of their paintings, but I really don't really have an idea of how to get started. I don't know how to budget for it. I don't know what our options are, and how would you suggest that I get started with that aspect of the project?
Before you answer that, I am so glad you're asking that question, Mark, because nearly every documentary filmmaker that I'm working with tells me, oh, and I'm going to put in a bit of animation, and I'm like, really? Okay. So thanks for asking that question. Go ahead. jump in.
And I just need $500,000 to do 3 minutes.
Yes.
That's about right.
Yeah. So do you guys have any ideas?
Well, first talk to an animation producer. I would say, well, you have a script, right, Mark? I would definitely get, wow. For me, I would start with, yeah, the budget. Like, how much are you willing to spend on this portion of it? And then then start to divide that portion into how much are you willing to spend on storyboarding it? How much are you willing to spend on actually animating it? You know, the different micro dividing the different divisions within the animation. And then from there, you have to start looking for the people who are willing to work for that amount.
Keika, what was the shift that happened with your film, with your current film, when you had one idea of a budget and then it's now a much smaller budget? Can you just tell the story of what happened there?
The shift was, so at first, when I thought my animation budget was going to be, what was it? It was going to be about
60,000.
I thought my animation budget was going to be 60,000 for Orange Way, and it shrunk considerably down to 15,000. All because,
sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
All because of Joanne connecting me with Undi, who had worked with animators in Indonesia, whose budget was incredibly less and whose quality was just as much as the animators I was going to work with in Brazil.
Yeah, I think that was so huge because, and this is the same, I would say, for all filmmakers, you know. Well, actually, Inbi, who couldn't be here today, I wish she could be here. But anyway, when she first came to me, she wanted to raise $100,000 to make her film, which is about 7 minutes. And I was just horrified. And eventually she ended up raising $25,000 to make it. It's a beautiful, I mean, stunning piece of work. But I just can't, I know how hard it is to raise money. And I just can't bear the idea of raising more money to get the same quality of work. I mean, I want to raise less money and get a better quality of work. That's basically my mantra, you know, raise less money, get better quality.
Yeah, it's really all about being resourceful.
Yeah, yeah. Kafi, do you have any thoughts for documentary filmmakers who want to put animation in their films?
I think Keika covered everything, you know. I don't want to be redundant, but you look at the script, find those animation parts, get somebody who knows how to produce animation to cost it out for you, let you know how much it's going to cost, and then you compare that to your budget, right? And then you see, okay, how can I make it happen for what I have? So I have nothing to add. She covered it.
Maybe you can put your contact information in the chat, because I think there are a few people here who might want to get your guidance, you know? Let's take one more question. And Joe, right, sorry, I've already called on you, sorry, go ahead.
Thanks for joining us, ladies. It was a really good talk and I really appreciated it. I'm a producer, director who started out in animation, and I was really charmed to see both of your projects in kind of full-blooded 2D Disney style animation, which sort of isn't in vogue right now. And I was wondering if in your pitching and you're showing your work, if you got any pushback on that it's not CGI. Why doesn't it look like Pixar? And why did you go that way?
Oh, actually, 2D is pretty popular right now. It's coming back. A lot of networks are like, please, more 2D. And animation is, people are hungry for it because of COVID. Animation is really, it's the most remote friendly production process out there for film. And like I said, people are really hungry for 2D because 3D is been so saturated market right now. There is so much of it, and you don't see too much 2D anymore. And after I released Doug on YouTube, I get many comments from fans saying like, "Oh my God, 2D, I love it. Oh my God, this is hand drawn. This is so beautiful. I love it." You know, and everybody's just very, very supportive of it.
Kafi, do you have?
Yeah. I definitely remember one of the earliest experiences that I had in terms of pushback was I was pitching the idea to a local studio that I wanted to collaborate with, and the head of the studio was like, "Oh, 2D, because yeah, everybody's doing 2D right now," in a kind of way like nope, nobody's doing 2D. You're lame. You're a failure. I was just like, okay, cool. So I did get some pushback, but only from that one person. Everybody else was just like, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. And I love, the thing about 2D is it's cheaper. Now, the thing with 3D is, and Keika, you can weigh in on this for me. The thing with 3D is that it may be cheaper long term, because once you've like built all of the models and rigged everything up and everything, you don't have to like, if it's the same franchise and you're not recreating characters, then you don't have to spend any of that time again doing all of that rigging and model creating, and you can just go and animate based on what you've built, the infrastructure that you've built. So it might be cheaper in the long term, or have cost saving aspects in the long term. But in terms of the a short-term one-off project, 2D is cheaper. So so that's something for micro-budget people who are independent filmmakers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And Keika, just a business question. How can people find out what the networks are looking for in terms of animation? Is there any way to find that out?
Network for looking for animation?
Yeah. Is it possible, to find out what Amazon Kids is looking for as opposed to the Cartoon Network? Or do you have to just meet with them and find that out?
You can easily, well, that's a good question, because I would spend hours researching on Google or YouTube, because sometimes the networks will release a YouTube video of what they're looking for, or release an article about what type of content they're looking for. But most of the time, I wouldn't find out until I meet with them.
Mm-hmm. And in your meetings with them, has it helped shape your understanding of what they're looking for?
Yeah, it has.
Yeah. Okay. So Diane.
I just had a question, because I know in my experience at UCSB, there is a contingent of animators. And so it feels like what my experience has been is just that if you're in contact with working animators, that they have access to some of what you're talking about, because they don't, I'm just saying that that's something that I'm experiencing, because what I find interesting about the 2 and 3D or the 2D animation is that I've seen students doing that for a while now and really back into that. So I'm not surprised that we're seeing, what we're seeing right now with that. So I don't know if that makes sense to me, but it seems like it's still like being in the right place in the loop kind of thing. I don't know what that feels like to anyone else, but.
Can I weigh in a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
I only have a little bit of background in animation, but I'm also learning right now how to pitch, and I'm being taught by an industry insider who's on The Simpsons right now. And the overwhelming impression I get is it sounds like Keika, you do get insights into the kinds of things they're looking for, but from what he was saying, it's more about they want to see what your ideas are. Mm-hmm. So the obviously there's certain boundaries of demographics and limitations on not having cuss words and things like that, and the type of content. But in terms of inspiration or story ideas or characters, they want to see what you've got. So it's more about come up with your ideas or pitches, and then when you hear that, if you're getting any kind of traction or feedback, then you can get into the nitty gritty of, is this too mature, or do we need to make it a bit younger, skew it? But I would say they really want to hear your inspiration. I don't know if that makes any sense to you guys.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yes. So I'm going to bring this to a close. And given that we've been talking so much about pitching today, I just wanted to say, anybody who is on Clubhouse, I'm going to be part of a pitch session, which is next Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And yeah, if you're on Clubhouse and know what the hell I'm talking about, please join and get on at 5 to 5 and be first in line to pitch. And it's just very interesting. There's a number of industry executives on there, and who knows what might happen. So I will see you then. And then 2 weeks from now, I'm going to start doing the Filmmakers Live every 2 weeks instead of 1 week. And I'm going to have this fantastic producer, Shirley Vinay Williams, on, and look forward to introducing you all to her. And have fun and have a happy Thursday. Thank you so much, Kafi. Thank you, Keika. See you soon.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you. You guys are wonderful.
Thank you. Take care.
All the way
Thanks.
from Trinidad, you know.
Thank you, Joanne, as ever.
Bye.